In the arid lands where the sun devours any hope of mercy, an empire rises built upon others' sweat and forgotten tears. Don Aurelio Mendoza, absolute master of these infinite domains, contemplates his vast fields from atop his veranda like a king observing his kingdom. His cold eyes reflect decades of uncontested power. Each scar on his face tells a story of victories conquered through force. It is in this implacable setting that a solitary figure emerges on the horizon. A young man in clothes worn by time and journey, carrying only a weathered bundle and a gaze that, though tired, maintains a strange flame of determination. His steps raise clouds of dust that dance in the suffocating air, as if the desert itself announced his arrival. When they finally meet in the main courtyard of the ranch, the contrast is devastating. On one side, the opulence and arrogance of one who has never known limits. On the other, the simplicity of someone who carries mysteries in the folds of his simple garments. "You have nothing to your name," laughs Don Aurelio, his voice echoing like mocking thunder across the silent fields. But there is something in the silence that follows, something in the way the young man holds the rancher's gaze, that makes time seem suspended between two worlds about to collide. Friends, this story is going to move you in ways you can't imagine. If you want to continue this epic journey with me, I really need your support. Every like and every subscription makes a huge difference, so I can continue bringing these incredible Old West stories. This is how you help me keep this channel alive, because without you, there's no way I can continue this mission of telling the most exciting adventures that ever existed. Do you think this young man has some special connection to these lands? Comment your theories. Dawn breaks mercilessly over Don Aurelio's lands, and with it comes the first trial for the young stranger. Like a general commanding an army of subjugated souls, the rancher charts the newcomer's destiny with a cruel smile that doesn't reach his icy eyes. "You're going to work like you've never worked in your life," declares Aurelio, pointing to the fields that stretch as far as the eye can see. "And if you survive the first month, maybe I'll consider that you're worth the food you eat." The work is brutal, a symphony of suffering that begins before the sun rises and only ends when the stars already shine in the black sky. The young man, who introduced himself only as Miguel, carries burdens that would break larger men, digs ditches under the scalding heat, and tames wild horses with a skill that leaves the other farmhands intrigued. But it is in moments of greatest humiliation that something extraordinary is revealed. When Don Aurelio forces him to eat with the dogs, Miguel maintains a silent dignity that echoes like a mute challenge. When he is whipped for supposed insubordination, his eyes show no anger, but a deep understanding that disturbs even the most hardened overseers. The older workers begin to whisper among themselves during the scarce hours of rest. Jose, an old farmhand who has worked these lands for 4 decades, observes Miguel with an uneasy look. "There's something familiar about him," he murmurs to his bunkmate. "The way he rides, how he speaks. I've seen this before, but I can't remember where." Maria, the cook who knows all the ranch's secrets, notices details others ignore. Miguel's hands, though calloused by hard work, carry old scars that tell different stories. His posture, even bent by fatigue, maintains an instinctive nobility that no amount of humiliation can break. During the nights, when the wind blows across the fields carrying whispers from the past, Miguel looks at the stars with an expression that mixes longing and determination. He carries secrets in the depths of his being, like an ancient book whose pages await the right moment to be opened. Don Aurelio, from atop his arrogance, doesn't realize he is feeding a force that one day might consume everything he has built. Each planted humiliation is a seed of a future he cannot foresee. Miguel's 3rd week on Don Aurelio's lands is interrupted by an apparition that makes the desert itself seem suspended in time. A black carriage emerges on the horizon like a prophetic shadow, raising clouds of dust that dance in the wind like restless spirits. The man who descends from it carries the weight of decades and the silent authority of one who guards secrets capable of shaking empires. Don Eliseo Varga, lawyer from the capital, is a figure Don Aurelio didn't expect to see. His snow-white hair contrasts with black eyes that seem to read men's souls like ancient scrolls. In his wrinkled hands, a worn leather briefcase guards documents that make the powerful rancher furrow his brow with unease. Aurelio. His voice echoes across the courtyard like the sound of an ancient sentence. I came to fulfill a promise made long ago. A promise that involves these lands and their true destiny. While the two men head toward the main house, leaving behind a trail of palpable tension, Miguel works in the stables with a dexterity that continues to intrigue the veterans. His hands master the wildest horses with refined technique, as if he had been born riding thoroughbreds instead of learning on dusty streets. Jose, the old farmhand, observes Miguel's every movement with growing disturbance. During the lunch break, he can no longer contain his unease. Boy, he calls Miguel to an isolated corner. Where did you really come from? Because I swear by my mother's memory that I've seen these gestures before, this way of riding. Miguel pauses, his hands interrupting the movement of smoothing a colt's mane. For an instant, a shadow crosses his face, as if ancient memories fought to emerge from the depths of his soul. Sometimes, he responds in a low voice, laden with a melancholy that doesn't match his few years. We feel echoes of lives we don't know if we lived or dreamed. Maybe you're seeing ghosts from the past, Jose. But there's something in the way he pronounces certain words, a refined education that escapes through the rags and dust. Maria, who listens to the conversation from a distance, feels a shiver run down her spine. That voice, that cadence. Where had she heard it before? Meanwhile, in the main house, raised voices escape through the open windows. Don Eliseo spreads documents on the mahogany table like one revealing cards from a deadly game, and Don Aurelio paces back and forth like a caged beast. Destiny moves in the shadows, weaving invisible threads that will soon reveal a tapestry of truths capable of forever transforming the balance of those arid lands. The silence in the main house is broken by the dry sound of papers being spread on the mahogany table, each document carrying the weight of truths long buried. Don Eliseo Varga observes Don Aurelio with the patience of one who has witnessed the birth and fall of empires, while his trembling but firm hands reveal certificates, wills, and maps that make the powerful rancher pale. These lands, declares the lawyer with solemn voice, were never yours by right, Aurelio. They were conquered through a farce that lasted 20 years, but truth always finds its way back to light. The documents tell a story that Don Aurelio tried to bury in the depths of time. Don Ricardo Mendoza, Aurelio's younger brother, had been the true heir to the ancestral lands. A noble-hearted man who fell in love with a simple woman and decided to live away from opulence, dedicating himself to a life of simplicity and honest work. Ricardo died believing you would care for his son. Don Eliseo's words cut through the air like sharp blades. But you made any trace of the child disappear, spread rumors that he had died along with his mother. 20 years, Aurelio. 20 years of lies. Meanwhile, in the stables, Miguel works with a different intensity, as if something ancestral awakened in his veins. Jose can no longer contain his suspicions and approaches with determined steps. Miguel, his voice trembles with the force of revelation. You have Don Ricardo's eyes, the same green eyes I saw for the last time 2 decades ago, when he left with his pregnant wife. The young man stops, his hands still holding the horse's reins, but his whole body tenses like a rope about to break. Fragments of memories begin to emerge like waters from a long-dammed spring. My mother, whispers Miguel, his voice laden with ancient pain, always told me my father was a good man who died defending what was right. She never told me about these lands, but before dying, she gave me this. From inside his worn shirt, Miguel pulls out a gold ring with the Mendoza family crest, the same symbol that adorns the ranch gates. The metal shines in the sun like a star being reborn from the ashes of oblivion. In the main house, Don Eliseo continues his relentless revelation. Ricardo's son didn't die, Aurelio. He grew up far from here, but blood doesn't lie. And now, he pauses dramatically, he has returned home. The echo of these words seems to cross the walls and reach every corner of the property, as if the earth itself recognized its true master. The wind blows stronger, carrying with it the weight of a truth that will forever change everyone's destiny. The The revelation echoes across the fields like thunder announcing the coming storm. In the main courtyard, two worlds collide when Don Aurelio emerges from the main house, with his face transfigured by fury, followed by the implacable Don Eliseo, who carries in his hands the documents that seal the fate of an empire built on lies. Miguel remains at the center of the whirlwind that has formed, the ancestral ring shining in his hands like a beacon of truth amid the darkness of 2 decades of deception. The workers gather in a semicircle, silent witnesses to a moment that will redefine their own existence. "Impossible!" roars Don Aurelio, his voice echoing like the roar of a wounded beast. "This brat can't be. Ricardo was dead. They were all dead." But the lawyer raises a final document, yellowed by time, bearing a judge's signature and the capital's official seal. The birth certificate doesn't lie, Aurelio. Miguel Ricardo Mendoza, legitimate son of your brother, legal heir to these lands by right of blood and law. The silence that follows is disturbing, as if the desert itself held its breath. Miguel looks around, seeing for the first time with different eyes everything that had always belonged to his lineage: the golden fields, the mountains on the horizon, the infinite sky. Everything resonates with an ancestral familiarity that awakens in his chest. Jose kneels before the young man, tears sprouting from his tired eyes. "Forgiveness, my lord. Forgiveness for not having recognized you before. You have the same noble heart as your father." But Miguel raises the old farmhand gently, his own tears tracing clean furrows on his dusty face. "Jose, you don't owe me reverence. If these lands are truly mine, I want them to continue being home for all of you." Don Aurelio retreats, his mind quickly calculating the implications of the revelation. 2 decades of absolute power don't surrender easily, and his cold eyes already trace dark plans. "Documents can be forged," he murmurs with venom in his voice, "and accidents happen frequently in these dangerous lands." The threat hangs in the air like a vulture waiting for death. But Miguel shows no fear. Instead, a determination emerges that seems to spring from the depths of his soul, as if the blood of generations of Mendozas flowed stronger in his veins. "Uncle." His voice now carries a natural authority that makes even the horses stop neighing. "You will have a choice. You can leave in peace with what you've accumulated honestly, or you can try to maintain by force what was never yours." The wind blows stronger, raising whirlwinds of dust that dance between the two men like omens of a war about to begin. Ledihar. The following morning is born tinged with red, as if the sky itself sensed the bloodshed that was to come. Don Aurelio didn't sleep during the night, and his dark decisions echo through the corridors of the main house like the steps of a predator stalking. Messengers departed before dawn, riding to neighboring ranches where other powerful men owe favors to the fallen patriarch. Miguel, for his part, finds himself facing the greatest dilemma of his young existence. Sitting on the steps of the property's old chapel, he contemplates his lineage's ring while the first golden lights bathe the fields he now recognizes as his inheritance. The weight of responsibility is crushing, not just for the lands, but for the lives of all the workers who depend on these same lands to survive. "My lord," Jose approaches, his voice laden with urgency. "Aurelio's men are arming themselves. I saw rifles being distributed in the sheds, and riders arrived during the early morning. The old farmhand is not alone. Maria, the cook, brings with her a revelation that freezes Miguel's blood. Your uncle sent for Los Cuervos, the most feared mercenaries in this region, men who kill for money and ask no questions. The news spreads across the fields like fire in dry straw. The workers divide between those who, moved by ancestral loyalty, position themselves beside the legitimate heir, and others who, taken by fear, prefer to keep distance from the imminent conflict. It's a division that cuts the community's heart like a sharp blade. Miguel stands up, and for the first time since his arrival, his posture completely reveals the nobility that runs in his veins. "I will not allow innocent blood to be spilled for my cause," he declares with firm voice. "Whoever wants to leave, let them leave now. I will bear no resentment toward anyone." But surprisingly, most remain. Men and women who worked these lands for decades choose to stay beside the one who represents not just justice, but hope for a better future. Among them is Carlos, the honest foreman who always silently questioned Don Aurelio's cruel methods. "This fight isn't just yours, Miguel," declares Carlos, checking his old but well-maintained rifle. "It's for all of us who worked like slaves while he lived like a king." At midday, when the sun reaches its merciless peak, the two armies form in the open fields. On one side, Don Aurelio with his mercenaries and thugs, unscrupulous men moved by greed and power. On the other, Miguel and his defenders, simple workers armed more with courage than weapons, but united by a just purpose. The silence stretches like a taut rope about to break. Don Eliseo, positioned on neutral ground, raises the legal documents one last time, offering a final chance for peaceful resolution. But Don Aurelio spits on the ground, his response echoing across the fields. "Let gunpowder decide who is the true master of these lands." The first shot resonates like the bell that announces the end of an era. The gunpowder smoke still hangs over the fields when silence returns, heavier than the desert air itself. The confrontation was brief but devastating, leaving scars on the earth that will forever witness the price of unbridled greed. Don Aurelio lies among his fallen mercenaries, his empire of lies crumbling like sand castles in the wind. Miguel remains standing at the center of the battlefield, his clothes torn and stained, but his green eyes shine with a determination that transcends physical victory. Around him, the survivors, both his defenders and some of Aurelio's men who surrendered, observe in respectful silence the young man who emerged from the ashes like a reborn phoenix. Don Eliseo approaches with tired steps, the legal documents still in his trembling hands. "The lands are yours by right, Miguel. But tell me, what do you intend to do with this inheritance conquered through so much suffering?" The young heir looks around the devastated fields, then at the hopeful faces of the workers who bet their lives on his cause. His words, when they finally come, carry the weight of wisdom beyond his years. "These lands never belonged to just one man," he declares, his voice echoing across the fields. "They belong to everyone who works them with love and honest sweat. We will divide the properties among the families who built their lives here." Jose kneels again, but Miguel raises him once more. "There are no masters or servants here, only brothers united by the same destiny." In the days that follow, a new order emerges from the ashes of conflict. The lands are redistributed, fair contracts are established, and for the first time in decades, genuine laughter echoes across the fields. But Miguel carries in his chest an unrest that finds no words. One morning, when the sun still hides behind the mountains, Jose finds only a letter on the main house table. In careful handwriting, Miguel explained his departure. There were other lands where injustice reigned, other places where his experience could make a difference. Maria will discover later that he took with him only the essentials: his horse, some provisions, and the ancestral ring. In the stables, he left behind a fortune in gold, his share of the inheritance that he preferred to transform into schools and hospitals for the region. Months later, travelers bring news of a mysterious young man who appears at distant ranches, always defending the oppressed against tyrannical bosses. Some say he carries names from different places, but his green eyes always remain the same. Jose, now administrator of the prosperous lands, looks every night toward the horizon where Miguel disappeared. He knows that somewhere under the same infinite sky, the young man continues his journey, no longer as heir to lands, but as guardian of justice in a world that still needs heroes. The lands flourish, the workers prosper, but the legend has only begun. Because some seeds planted in the human heart grow beyond the limits of any property. And so, this saga ends. Or is it just the beginning of an even greater legend? Will Miguel find his true destiny? The horizon guards secrets that may one day be revealed.